really special one today because we've actually got a guest on. Um, we thought because the theme of this season is all about being visible online, we would get a photographer in, because who better to exemplify being visible online than a photographer? And because, of course, we're all about making our clients and other kindred creatives more visible in the world. We've invited the lovely Emily Brown to come and chat with us today. So a little bit about Emily and her business and how she fits in with digital gold dust. So Emily is an internationally published and multi-award winning lifestyle and wedding photographer based in Kent, which is how I met her. As an eco-friendly business owner, she specialises in images taken outdoors using natural light, incorporating the local landscape as her backdrop. Emily is known for capturing countryside weddings, family photos, and promotional imagery for businesses who are either based outdoors or within the health and well-being sector, particularly landscape designers and vegan brands. She loves telling a story and creating memories to cherish. You can find her online at emilybrown.photography, and you can check out her work on Instagram, Emily_Brown_photography. Now, I met Emily right back at the beginning of my solo business owner journey, and she was kind enough to introduce me to other business owners she thought I might be able to help and who might be able to help me. And she's going to hate me for telling this story, because one day, not realizing that we were one and the same, she stood up in a networking session and asked if anyone could introduce her to the human behind a lovely vegan chocolate business she'd spotted online. And then later on discovered it was me after all, and she already did know the owner. We had definitely had a good chuckle over that one, as well as more than a couple of pumpkin spice lattes. And it's another powerful lesson in branding that's really stuck with me. Emily has been my business and Halloween loving pal for years now. And she's always my go-to gal if I discover that my clients need beautiful brand photography. And that's exactly where today's story begins in earnest. So, Emily, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
We're really excited to have you with us. So, why don't we start by talking about how you became a kindred creative and a little about kind of your story?
Sure. So I have been a full-time photographer for 8 years now, but I kind of started at the beginning, as I guess most of us do, trying to find my footing and what it was that I really loved doing and who I loved working with. And it was really only in more recent years that I kind of found that speciality. And since then, that's led me to just amazing connections with other business owners and collaborators. And really, it was 2019. My partner and I were trying to be more eco-conscious in our home. And I suddenly realized that I could not try and do that in my domestic life and not try and implement something in the business, especially in such a digital age where I use so much electric, like a disgusting amount of electric. For all the battery charging and editing and stuff. So I kind of then fell down into a deep dive of the type of imagery that I love taking, as you said, with that lovely intro, thank you very much, is outdoorsy, it's green, it's countryside. And that just goes perfectly hand in hand with our kind of personal values, and kind of trying to protect that beauty of nature and introduce people to it who don't often get to explore. So at that point, I fell down a rabbit hole of research on how I could make my business more sustainable. And I offset everything that I use now by partnering with a fabulous charity called Tree Sisters, who plant trees in areas of deforestation around the world. I also gift trees to my wedding couples, which is really nice. So they know they've got trees growing in like Brazil and Madagascar and places that I hope one day they would want to go and visit and actually see. By speaking about that and also changing my suppliers. So for example, my wedding albums are made of recycled paper, they're UK based, they're made from vegan materials. Just by making those changes for myself and then speaking about them, the amount of people that came out the woodwork with shared values was just amazing. So I think that's probably the point. I feel like the earlier years, I was kind of just floating around, not really sure exactly what I wanted to do, just trying to make money. So I feel like that was the turning point.
Yeah, and it's not, it nicely leads on to kind of like how we, you know, kind of became sorry, working together, because obviously Lee, as you said, you already knew Emily, and when we first had our discussions about how we would potentially like collaborate on client projects, things like that, quite quickly I was sort of saying, oh, you know, a photographer would be great, because obviously as a web designer, that's, you know, the copywriting and the imagery would be like a perfect sort of combination and give that real 360 sort of level of service to clients, which I think is so nice when you know, and that kind of values piece, that kindred creative, is really important, where you've got similar values to other people, and obviously our clients are very similar and share those similar values. So actually it's really nice to have that little sort of network of good referrals where we know that our clients and each of us that we might be referring to have those aligned values and come from that kind of perspective. So it was really lovely to meet you, Emily, and to actually get to work with you on a lovely client project quite recently. So
yeah, you too. I think it's just it's so nice. There's a feeling that comes with it when you just meet people that just get it. So for example, our little collaboration, exactly what you were just speaking about, it just makes the work, I mean, work will always have a slight level of work to it, obviously, but it just makes it so much more enjoyable, and the results, I think, just so much more successful, because we just enjoy each other's company, and we just see so much value in what we all do. Yeah, it's a lovely little partnership.
yes, it definitely makes, as you say, it makes the work less worky. Enjoyable. And particularly so, I think, for our clients, I think that was definitely something that came through with our client Alison that we worked with. Her feedback very much was that it was just so nice, to have like trusted people and not have to go down their own version of rabbit holes to find, you know, all the people to do all the bits. Actually, there's this little nice network that you can just step into, and, you know, we talk to each other, we collaborate, we share information. Therefore, you're not duplicating the work with the client of, like, you know, getting to know them and their clients and what their business is and how they want that brand image to come across in their words and in their imagery, and obviously on the website. So it's definitely seemed like it was much easier, from what Alison said, to actually be put in touch with trusted creatives, and actually that's that whole process of how we can kind of converse and make it less work really for the client having to kind of duplicate things.
Absolutely. And I think it's just putting it in the hands of the experts, really. Because, for example, Alison is amazing at what she does, but that's not copywriting, web design, or photography. So having sort of a one-stop shop where, you know, we totally just got her and her brand. It's so lovely, and we all really loved it and wanted to help her, you know, get it out there and just be doing the best that she absolutely can and showing people what it is that she offers. And so, yeah, just we killed it, ladies.
So, and that's the thing, isn't it? It is about getting to that deeper level of what that person and their business is about. It's not just the surface level of, oh, you know, here's some nice photos, here's some nice brand colors, you know, and here's some copy to go on your website. It's actually like, you know, we really care about getting to know that person, getting to understand what they're trying to achieve in their business, and supporting them in that, which I think is where, in a way, the real value is, because, you know, anyone can go and find, you know, a photographer or a web designer or something, you know, to do them a nice site. But obviously, if you haven't got that kind of underlying sort of emotional connection, then I think that's where the real gold dust is.
100%. Yeah, perfect.
We should probably mention at this point, Alison is Alison Marquise Harris, the Feel Good Movement Coach. We should probably actually pop a link to her website in the show notes, because that is the overall end output of this collaboration, which was we got really clear on who her ideal clients were, what her mission was, how she wanted to show up in the world, That got shared with you guys as you went forward with the visual stuff. So Sammy, you worked on the branding and the site map, and then I took that and started writing the web pages, and we just passed stuff back and forth between us in order to create this final output, which is this gorgeous digital sanctuary that she's got, that she's super proud of.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? You want them to feel proud and to share it, and it just elevates your business. And I think, again, having that collaboration, it meant that, you know, by the time she got to the photo shoot, we'd worked through her brand colors. She was great at going and, you know, finding things that match with that. Emily's style of photography and the lighting and everything. Just as soon as I popped the photos in, it's just like, oh, gorgeous. It just matched the tones. It was perfect. And you can't underestimate, you know, how having everything kind of really feeling so aligned just adds that extra bit of magic that you just, you know, don't otherwise get, I think.
So we're going to talk about photography more specifically as well at this point.
Yeah.
Shall we? Shall we go there?
Dig in.
Right. I'm going to go with the first question in that case then. Emily, tell us, how does photography drive engagement for our lovely business owners who are going, oh, I don't know, this is photography. Do I really need to?
The answer is yes. So I think the most valuable thing I've learned is how much of a selling point you are in your business. And it's actually a lesson that I've learned myself as a business owner. My imagery, to a certain degree, speaks for itself. That is the product that I'm offering people. So, for example, a couple getting married can go on my Instagram, go on my website, see what I'm capable of. And that's lovely, and I hope they like it. But to a certain degree, I'm good at what I do, it shows. But actually, I've had multiple bookings from people by just showing myself and my life. And I think if you are a business owner that's kind of involved, like for me, I'm the one who's there with a bride on a wedding day. She's getting ready. I'm the one showcasing what a business does and how they make it and the products they offer. I want them to enjoy spending time with me. And I just knew that pumpkin spice lattes would be mentioned multiple times. We might need like a tally going.
Should have set up a bingo sheet for this one.
Should have. But genuinely, I had a lovely client, I'll shout out to Lauren, who was, if I understand correctly, lurking on my Instagram for a while. She wanted to book me. One of her friends had just graduated, and it was during the time of COVID, so couldn't have her graduation done on her photos. She was lurking for a while, trying to find someone. I'm sure she won't mind me saying she was, until I turned it around, quite camera shy. And she messaged me the day that I had posted that I was having a pumpkin spice latte and said that she's been looking for a photographer for a while. She found me a while ago. She's kind of been lurking. And it was actually my post about the pumpkin spice latte that convinced her that I was the person for her and for the job that she would enjoy spending time with, and that we had similarities. And I'd never really thought about the impact something as silly as me having a drink just in my day-to-day life. There are people watching and wanting to see that behind the scenes authenticity and meet the person behind the brand. I've since done, so I did that shoot with her and her lovely group of friends, then did one of her friend's sister's weddings. Lauren's actually getting married this year as well. We've done her engagement shoot. I'm doing her wedding. So it's just harking back to what I said about when you find those people that you gel with. So in answer to your question in a very long-winded way, I think authenticity and the person behind the brand is where the photos can really add value. Yes, if you're a creative who makes something or, you know, produces artwork, or yes, you need pictures of that, but actually people really want to see how it's made, the thought process behind the initial ideas and the concept, and who it is that's creating this lovely piece. So I think, yeah, don't be afraid to show yourselves.
And that's what makes you stand out, doesn't it? I mean, it's those elements that is what makes you unique. And it's very much, you say, about with the story of how, you know, the client messaging you after you post about your drink, it is about those human connections, isn't it? We are all, you know, and I think that's so easy to forget when you're kind of behind screens or predominantly working online, you know, for that initial connection, is that it is about one human speaking to another.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people forget that. And it is that connection of people do want to see you, the person that is behind the brand, whether you have a brand name or you use your own name, you still want those visuals, don't you? And I think a lot of people are quite reluctant to show themselves and to be photographed, and I imagine you get probably quite a lot of camera shy people, because I know a lot of people like squirm at the idea of a photo shoot, but as you say, it's like building that trust and you want people to feel comfortable, so it's really important they do get to see you in your business as well, to feel comfortable.
Absolutely. And I think there's still, whether it's a sort of a time frame thing, I think people still try to separate sort of business and home. Whereas actually a lot of the business owners that we work with and the people that we meet, they are like heart-led business owners. They are their business and they're offering whatever it is they're offering for personal reasons and passion. And so you might showing my age here as well, but like you might think that, you know, watching Twilight, that is just a really nerdy part of your day that you want to hide. But I posted about it, I think I did it with Scooby-Doo as well, just on an Instagram story. And someone else reached out and was like, oh my God, you're my person. Come and photograph my wedding. Like they wanted to hang out with me on their wedding day and feel like they had a friend with them, supporting them, and yes, doing a good job. But there's no point hiring someone to be with you on the most magical day of your life and, you know, quite a stressful one, if you're not going to have that rapport. And I think that flows through everything, family photography, working with businesses. It's exactly that human touch that you're talking about. Yeah, it's just really important. And I think people get quite self-conscious, and actually it's that nerdy side of you, what you're doing at home, that people want to see.
Yeah, definitely. How do you help people kind of bring that forward in your shoots, you know, and kind of deal with the camera shy aspect and make them feel comfortable? What are your tricks?
Oh, I have many tricks up my it's hard to pinpoint and describe. I think, to be honest, you have to be the right kind of person as well, without sounding really vain. I'm totally about to toot my own horn, but I am quite a people person.
Toot away. Toot away.
Okay.
Don't toot our horns enough.
Yeah. I am a people person. And I just think it's that the initial impression you make. Like I'm very happy and very open to being everyone's friend. So for example, all my brides, all the business owners I've worked with, we follow each other on Instagram, we message about their kids, we're friends on Facebook. It's just more about the relationship. Like I think everything in this conversation is going to keep coming back to that, I think. But because of that, I do have just tips and tricks I can't even really put my finger on, but it's just things I'll say or jokes I'll make to help them loosen up. I'm also the type of photographer that, you know, I'm not going to be hiding behind the camera and keeping everything a surprise until you get your gallery. I do show people as we're going. And also I think it kind of helps being a woman as well. So for example, with Alison, stunning lady, but every single person I work with has something about themselves they're either not sure about or a certain angle they don't like. So for example, with Alison, going through the photos, she would say, oh, love that composition and love what you're doing there, but can I just turn slightly more this way? Or in Alison's situation, being a Pilates instructor, I'm not an expert on form and, you know, the actual movements that she's doing. So there was very much a communication the whole way through the shoot and double checking with her, does it show in this picture that the right muscles are engaged? If another Pilates instructor saw this photo, would they think that you're a complete amateur? Like, so having that conversation and just keeping the communication open and basically treating it as a team effort. Yeah, I've never not managed to get someone to be happy if they hate having their photo taken. So at the moment I'm on a 100% success rate, which is amazing. So I'm clearly doing something right.
Definitely.
So what mindset stuff do you tend to see coming up again and again that has to be overcome for business owners to get in front of a camera?
I think there can be a lot of overthinking and worrying about how certain things are being represented. And I think it does come down to that whole sort of personal versus professional argument. I can't think off the top of my head, but I know I have had clients say, oh, I'm going to move that off the table, or I'm going to, clear this space of, and actually it's something lovely at home of, I don't know, a kid's artwork or something. And that person might be a mum to young children. And actually that's going to be a really valuable piece of information to people looking at the website. So I think it's probably overthinking or, worrying so much about colors and outfits and location. And I will always be here to guide, but until I'm sort of clear on somebody's brand, I do sometimes obviously need a bit of guidance from them as to what is the image they want to portray, so that I don't just go down a completely wrong route. And I think that can sometimes be the trickiest part. When they're actually in front of the camera, we'll have fun, I'll make jokes, and it's quite an enjoyable experience, I think. But I think it's the leading up to that. People can get very in their heads about the finer details, like the smaller things, and they don't need to. I got it, it's fine.
Very covered. Yeah, maybe it's that kind of like perfectionism of like, oh, it's a proper shoot, so therefore like everything needs to be tidied away and everything needs to look perfect. And actually sometimes that's not the reality, and as you say, it is those little bits of humanity that shine through that bring that personality. And like you say, the fact that somebody's got young children, it means that we'll connect with somebody else, and oh well, they're a mum, they know how it is, they'll understand me if I'm using their service or their product. So I think it's obviously easy to kind of underestimate sometimes just those little gems that can pop up naturally. And I guess it comes back again to that authenticity, isn't it? Like, especially if you are shooting in like a home environment or somewhere where they're working, you kind of don't want it all to be pristine and perfect. It's got to look authentic, like they're doing their work or they're doing their service.
100%.
There's a real trend at the minute, isn't there, of people hiring things like really polished looking Airbnbs to get their photos done. What's your take on that?
So I think it can be a really good idea. I've got a client at the moment who makes really lovely, I'll just do a shout out since you asked. Shout out to Maddie from Green Planet Living.
Oh,
who does, gorgeous plantable stationery. She's an eco brand, but she's also now expanded to candles and reed diffusers and more like homey. So she's rebranded. Don't know if you've seen. She's no longer just stationery, so she's changed the name to Green Planet Living. And things as well, like throw pillows and just basically loads of things for the home now. For the more e-commerce product shots, I think there is always a place for having a really nice blank canvas like an Airbnb. It would then be just sort of sprucing it up a bit and making it seem a bit more lived in. And that's where just a really easy choice is, adding cups or books to the table, or, again, taking the space that gives the aesthetic that you want. That's great, instead of trying to force it. Sort of, we've been racking our brains recently. There are so many nooks and crannies between our houses that I'm sure would work for candle shots, but actually to give off the lifestyle and target market she's looking for, that's not either of our houses. So getting an Airbnb did cross my mind, but we would definitely then need to soften it and make it look a bit more genuine, and maybe add some, throw pillows and blankets and whatnot. But it can be a really, really good starting point to make sure that the initial box is ticked, and then go from there.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point with the product-based businesses and e-commerce. I used to look after an e-commerce channel when I worked in the auction industry, so did a lot of photo shoots with the photographers, and you say like getting, you know, some of those really clean, you know, because in the day, if you're selling a product, people want to see the detail of it. They want to see what it's like from the top, from the behind, from the side. You want to see it in situ, obviously, and then that's when you say, as you say, you can bring in those kind of more homely, especially if you're doing something like with candles, so people can imagine what that would be like, that product, and what it would feel and smell like in their home, but also just the practicality of like size and scale, and you know, just seeing the actual look of the product is actually quite important, as you say, to have some of those like clean photos as well.
100%. And I think that is where places like Airbnbs are fantastic, because you could have, for example, different scenes set up in different rooms. So hypothetically, sticking with the candles, you could have one sort of cozy living room or bedroom scene. You know, what would it look like if you're having a Friday evening in, watching Netflix with your candle lit, blankets out? But then for a certain other type of clientele, it might be there's also a dining room. What does it look like when you're having a dinner party and you've got friends over? So you can tick multiple boxes in sort of a multifunctional space, which is, for efficiency, really helpful.
I think one thing that we see when you do have sort of professional brand photography, I mean, obviously I work with clients that sometimes just aren't quite yet at that stage, and you know, I'm a big advocate of like, don't hold back just because you don't have, you know, the polished versions of everything ready. But I do notice quite a difference once you do get, you know, once you are at that stage in your business where you're like, I'm ready to kind of, you know, invest in these level of services, is that kind of boosting confidence. And do you see like a change in kind of people in terms of like how they kind of step into their business, or like being the business owner? I think in a way it's like, okay, I'm taking this seriously now, you know, there's that kind of sort of level of commitment. Do you see that with people?
I think so. I think the same can be said for, you know, properly, well, investing in everything that the three of us do. I think it's just upping the ante. I mean, it's amazing to be able to earn a living from a passion or a hobby and something that you love. I've been lucky enough to grow that myself. But I think it does show if you've actually invested in the quality. And one thing that has been really cool with clients that I've had is, it's once you spend that time as well, it's the little gems they take away from that that then they carry throughout their journey. So for example, I just did a shoot a week or two ago with a lovely jewelry maker. I'm just on to shout about loads of other people. I can't just like mention anecdotes and not shout out. Sarah Walton Jewelry, shout out to her too. She makes really lovely pieces, and you know, upcycles maybe slightly older family heirlooms and things. We just did a shoot in her studio, which is really cool, for her new website, showing her actually, oh, I don't know what the terminology is, welding, melting, smelting, I don't know, making jewelry, texturizing it and everything. And there was this one spot where there's this really lovely plant that kind of overhangs a bit onto this dark wood table, and her branded jewelry boxes and some of the rings that were in them that were like really vibrant colors looked so lovely, with like a little bit of strategic leaf overhang. And I noticed, and if she hears this, she's been caught out, she's now using that for all her Instagram shots, that one spot on the table. So she clearly liked it in the store. But I think it's really cool that, you know, there's things that, for example, Lee, you might write for a client that they know what they do, they love what they do, and they can quite easily chat about it in conversation. But actually, when you're faced with meeting new people, or well, scarier situations like being on a podcast, or say networking groups, the language sometimes doesn't come to mind, or the way, I mean, the way that you described me was lovely. So I'm going to take some of that in how I talk about myself. So I think probably, yeah, it probably helps people to see their businesses in a slightly new light as well, and from a slightly different perspective from somebody kind of on the outside, but who really understands what they're trying to do. I think there's probably really helpful nuggets that I've seen people take away and use for years then.
Yeah, and that's actually pretty transformational, isn't it, really? Because once, and like, great example with Lee with your words, like once you find the right words, and sometimes you do need somebody's help, and especially someone from outside, because I think it's very hard to be, to see your business in that kind of more outside way. And if you've got another pair of eyes on it, it's, they can pull out tweeze out those lovely little things that you take for granted or you just don't really think about.
Yeah.
And once that kind of language like locks in, and some of those words, and I know with our discussions, like I found that with my rebranding as well, that you're just like, oh, it's such a joy, because it's like these are the right type of words, and it feels right, and it feels aligned, and it flows so much easier, rather than the pain of trying to, obviously you want to come across authentic, and if you force that, then it feels off. But when you've kind of got that lovely vocabulary there, that really resonates, then that as you say, that flows through into your email letters, your Instagram posts, and it, as you say, it carries through the business. And the same example of that little spot on the table, you kind of notice that your creative eye got it, and she's like, oh yeah, that's really great, and that's kind of now becoming a little bit of a staple of her shoot. So people will see that image and know that that's her jewelry because of that setup. And I think it's that's really lovely, like those kind of little anecdotes that can actually be quite transformational in someone's business journey.
What you do is so special.
Thanks.
Just is. So what tips do you have for how to prepare for a brand photo shoot for our business owners who are listening, some of whom are more introverted, sensitive folk, and they're possibly a little bit more wary of getting in front of a camera. So what sort of things should they consider? Props, colors, actually mindset, getting prepared and actually taking the plunge. What would you suggest?
So I would say there are different levels of involvement in terms of actually showing your face, depending on the business, and depending on personalities. That is absolutely fine. I think any business owner should be prepared to have just at least one nice headshot of themselves, just to put a face to the name. I always find it really frustrating if I'm trying to get in touch with someone and I look on the website and there's just no human presence at all, because it feels like a bit, wary is too strong a word, but like you're phoning someone, you don't really have a point of reference. And obviously, as we've already discussed, people do really want to see that. So I'd probably say at the very least, showing your face maybe on just an about me page or something would be lovely. Once that's done, there are so many creative ways, and this is particularly for people who would be nervous in front of the camera, to show your service or offering without you having to feel like you're posing or whatever. If you're somebody who makes something, detailed shots of hands is lovely. Artsy shots of at the desk or writing in a journal where you don't have to look at the big scary camera is absolutely fine. I would work with you to find ways so that you're not uncomfortable. In terms of colors, locations, and sort of overall aesthetic, the most helpful thing is, and I know it can be a little bit tricky for people on day dot of running their businesses, is all that I really need to know is that you have an idea of the brand. It is always helpful to know who you're aiming for, so that I can then figure out, what we need. For example, Sarah with the jewelry, she's aiming for a different clientele to somebody that I went to school with who's also a jeweler. She uses people in all of her images who are in sort of their mid-20s because that's her target market. Sarah's isn't. therefore Sarah was actually the perfect choice for using her hands to show how she makes the jewelry, because subliminally those are not the hands of a 15-year-old, you know. So little things like that are really helpful for me to know. Branding colors also, if there's colors that are, even if you don't have a professional website, just on your business logo, or if I, for example, come to a house and realize you've got rose golds and pinks dotted everywhere, that's really good to know, because if they're colors you're like, then I'll absolutely try and include them. So just having a rough idea of what you want to represent and who it is you want to represent that to is really helpful, but we can work out all of the rest together.
So
Right.
Emily, to kind of wrap up a lot of this conversation, what one thing do you want listeners to take away from this episode? So if we started the phrase, "Dear soulful business owner, I wish you knew," how would you fill it?
I would say, I wish you knew how valuable you are as an individual, for all the reasons that we have been talking about throughout this episode. People want to see you, and people want to know who you are. So what you're doing, I'm sure, is fantastic, but just don't be afraid to show that human side as well. As messy or as nerdy or as weird as you think it might be, there are people out there who will resonate with that, and those are the people that you want to spend your time with.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about attracting those kindred spirits.
Exactly.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's where the gold dust is.
Where the gold is. Well, that's a lovely way to wrap up the episode, I think, don't you?
Absolutely.